Commander Jack Reynolds was having a particularly crappy Tuesday when the aliens decided to call. He'd just settled into his undersized office at the United Earth Space Command headquarters, nursing his third cup of coffee and contemplating the merits of early retirement, when every digital device on the planet simultaneously displayed the same message: "Attention species E4721. Your presence is requested at the Galactic Council. Coordinates follow." "You've got to be kidding me," Jack muttered, coffee sloshing over his desk as alarms blared throughout the building. "The one day I actually finish my paperwork." Within hours, the world's leaders had assembled in an emergency session that was about as organized as a kindergarten fire drill. Jack unfortunately had been summoned because of his extensive experience with non-terrestrial entities. This fancy phrase actually meant he'd once had a beer with a stranded Arcturian cargo pilot while waiting for the poor bastard's rescue ship. "Commander Reynolds," General Park said, her face a masterpiece of professional dread, "congratulations. You're now Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council." Jack stared blankly. "With all due respect, General, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I can barely represent myself at parent-teacher conferences. You're the only officer who's had actual contact with an alien species without trying to shoot it, study it, or ask if it wanted to pose for a selfie," Park replied. "Besides, the Council message specifically requested, and I quote, 'your least diplomatic representative to ensure authentic interaction.' They want our worst diplomat. That's concerning. No, they want our most authentic representative." "The translation's a bit fuzzy. Still sounds like me," Jack sighed, running a hand through his prematurely gray hair. "What exactly does an Earth ambassador do when the entire galaxy suddenly decides we exist?" The answer came in the form of Mari, a mostly accurate reasoning intelligence packed into a floating spherical chassis that looked like a disco ball with attitude. "Greetings, Commander Reynolds. I am Mari, your administrative assistant and cultural interpreter," the AI announced, hovering at eye level. "I have been programmed with 17 million diplomatic protocols in the complete history of human civilization. I am also equipped with 73 emergency self-destruct options should negotiations fail catastrophically." "That's not reassuring," Jack said. "It was not intended to be." Mari's light patterns shifted in what Jack swore was the AI equivalent of a smirk. "I have analyzed your personnel file. Your tendency toward inappropriate humor and disregard for authority makes you statistically the worst possible choice for this mission. I calculate a 97.3% chance you will say something that could be interpreted as a declaration of war. Only 97.3% question mark. I'm losing my touch." And there it is. Humor as a defense mechanism, classic human coping strategy when faced with existential terror. Mari circled his head like a judgmental moon. "The Galactic Council transport will arrive in 6 hours. I suggest you pack light, and perhaps review basic interspecies etiquette. For instance, did you know that direct eye contact is considered a mating invitation in 47 known civilizations?" Jack groaned. 6 hours to prepare for representing the entire human race. That's barely enough time to clean my apartment, let alone save our species. As he was escorted out to pack, the president of the United Earth Coalition stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "Reynolds, just try not to get us all killed." "All right, no promises, Madam President. But if we're being honest, any species advanced enough to have a Galactic Council probably stopped taking us seriously when they saw us eating Tide Pods for internet points." 6 hours later, Jack found himself standing on the White House lawn, dressed in a hastily modified dress uniform with diplomatic insignias sewn on by what must have been a caffeinated octopus. Mari hovered beside him, projecting what the AI assured him was the universal symbol for "please don't vaporize us." The alien ship that descended from the clouds looked nothing like the flying saucers of old sci-fi films. Instead, it resembled a massive, elegant sea creature, rippling with colors that shouldn't exist, and somehow making even less sense the longer you looked at it. "Remember," Mari whispered, "under no circumstances should you mention humanity's nuclear arsenals, reality television, or what we did to the dodo." Before Jack could respond, a beam of light enveloped them both. His last thought before being whisked away to represent humanity's first official meeting with galactic civilization was surprisingly calm. "If aliens are real, I wonder if they'll finally explain why USB plugs never go in right on the first try." The universe, as it turned out, had far more pressing questions for humanity. Being teleported across several light years feels exactly like you'd expect, like having your atoms disassembled and reassembled by a toddler with questionable spatial awareness. When Jack's consciousness snapped back into place, he was on his hands and knees, trying very hard not to reintroduce his breakfast to the universe. Typical human reaction to standard matter transfer, Mari observed, hovering serenely beside him. Perhaps you should have skipped that fourth coffee. Thanks for the advice, Jack muttered, straightening up to take in his surroundings. Holy! Words failed him, which was a first. They stood in a vast docking bay that made Earth's largest airports look like highway rest stops. Countless vessels of impossible designs moved with perfect precision, while beings of every conceivable, and many inconceivable, forms bustled about. Some floated, some crawled, some seemed to exist in more dimensions than strictly necessary. The Galactic Council station, Mari explained, home to representatives from over 12,000 civilizations. Construction began approximately 15,000 Earth years ago, roughly when humans were discovering that pointy sticks made hunting more efficient. So while we were inventing the spear, they were building space stations the size of small moons. Great, no pressure. A tall, willowy being with 4 arms and skin like polished obsidian approached them. Its face was a mesmerizing arrangement of geometric patterns that somehow conveyed both boredom and disdain. Earth representative, it stated in perfect English. I am Greeter 16, follow. Nice to meet you too, Jack said. Love what you've done with the place. Very spacious. Greeter 16 didn't acknowledge the comment, gliding ahead with silent efficiency. Jack and Mari followed through corridors that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry, passing beings that ranged from vaguely humanoid to eldritch horror's weird cousin from out of town. I'm noticing a lot of staring, Jack whispered to Mari. Is there something in my teeth? Humans are something of a curiosity, Mari replied. Many species placed bets on whether Earth would destroy itself before making contact. Several major gambling syndicates are facing bankruptcy due to your continued existence. Glad to disappoint the cosmic bookies, they arrived at what appeared to be a waiting area, where a creature that resembled a cephalopod in a 3-piece suit floated in front of a holographic display. Its tentacles moved with agitated precision. Ambassador Zrel of the Mr. Cian Collective, Mari identified. Senior member of the Council and notorious for his traditional views on emerging species. Ambassador Zrel turned, his eye stalks swiveling to focus on Jack with undisguised contempt. Ah. The human arrives. How quaint. I trust your primitive matter transfer experience wasn't too traumatic for your underdeveloped nervous system. Jack plastered on his best fake smile. About as traumatic as watching your species' interpretive dance performances, from what I've heard. Mari emitted the AI equivalent of a groan. And we've achieved potential diplomatic incident in under 5 minutes, a new record. Surprisingly, Zrel's skin rippled with color patterns that Mari translated as reluctant amusement. At least you're more entertaining than the silicon-based lifeforms from Rigel. They communicated exclusively through plate tectonics. Council meetings lasted centuries. Before Jack could respond, another alien approached, this one resembling a cross between a lemur and a sunflower, walking on backward-jointed legs. It wore what looked like scientific equipment, and practically bounced with excitement. Fascinating. A real human. I'm Clorx, xenobiologist specializing in Class C paradoxical species. May I scan you? Your species' combination of self-destructive tendencies and remarkable creativity is a subject of my doctoral thesis. Sure, marvelous. Clorx waved a device over Jack before he could finish agreeing. Just as the data suggests, your body simultaneously fights against and embraces entropy. You're designed to self-destruct but constantly trying not to. Brilliant evolutionary strategy or terrible mistake? No one knows. That's flattering, I think. Ambassador Zrel's tentacles curled in obvious disgust. The council chambers are ready. Try not to touch anything human. Your species' habit of claiming ownership over things you discover is well documented. They followed Zrel through a massive set of doors into what Jack could only describe as the most intimidating amphitheater in existence. Thousands of beings occupied tiered seating around a central platform. Hovering displays showed images of Earth, everything from war footage to children's birthday parties, to people arguing on the internet. What exactly is happening here? Jack whispered to Mari, based on context and the arrangement of judicial symbols. I believe this is a trial, Mari replied, and humanity appears to be the defendant. A trial? For what crime? Existing dangerously perhaps. You do have an impressive record of narrowly avoiding self-extinction. A booming voice echoed through the chamber, coming from a luminous cloud of particles at the highest tier. Council is now in session. Case Review Species E4721 Designation Humans, Planetary Origin Earth. Classification Potentially Hazardous Paradoxical Species. The Council will now evaluate whether containment protocols are warranted. Jack blinked. Did that talking fog just say containment protocols? Indeed, Mari confirmed. And based on historical precedent, containment ranges from planetary quarantine to, well, let's just say the dinosaurs didn't actually die from a natural asteroid impact. Zrel floated to a podium, tentacles spread wide in a gesture that screamed prosecutorial smugness in any language. Esteemed council members, I present evidence that humans represent a unique threat to galactic stability. Observe. The displays around the chamber shifted to show a montage of human history, nuclear explosions juxtaposed with heart transplant surgeries, war footage alongside symphony orchestras, environmental destruction next to reforestation projects. Here we see the fundamental paradox, Zrel continued. A species that creates beauty while simultaneously destroying it. A species that values peace yet constantly prepares for war. A species that develops medicine to extend life while inventing weapons to end it more efficiently. The displays shifted to show children playing tag in a schoolyard. Note this particularly disturbing behavior, Zrel said, voice dropping dramatically. Young humans engage in ritualistic chase scenarios, deliberately invoking fear responses for entertainment. They call this fun. I submit that any species that converts fear into pleasure is inherently unpredictable and dangerous. Several council members recoiled in visible horror at the playground footage. Seriously, Jack whispered. They're scared of tag. Clorks, who had settled next to them, nodded enthusiastically. Most civilized species evolved away from predatory behaviors millions of years ago. The concept of chase games is profoundly disturbing to them. Almost as disturbing as your species' habit of watching horror entertainment deliberately to feel fear. Jack glanced at Mari. I'm starting to think we might be in trouble here. Mari's lights pulsed slowly. Commander, I calculate our chances of avoiding containments at approximately 12.7%. And dropping. As Zrel continued listing humanity's crimes against predictable behavior, Jack realized he'd need more than his usual sarcasm to get Earth out of this cosmic courtroom drama. He'd have to convince an audience of advanced aliens that humans deserve to exist freely in the galaxy, despite literally everything in human history suggesting otherwise. Any advice? He whispered to Mari. Try not to mention April Fool's Day, the AI replied. A species that deliberately spreads misinformation for amusement might be the final straw. Jack sighed. Saving humanity from interstellar judgment was definitely not covered in his job description. Or perhaps it was in very fine print no one ever bothered to read. Much like the terms and conditions of existence humanity had apparently violated. Ambassador Zrel was on a roll, his tentacles gesticulating with the enthusiasm of a televangelical squid selling salvation. The displays around the chamber cycled through increasingly bizarre examples of human behavior that apparently constituted crimes against galactic sensibility. Observe, Zrel announced. Humans deliberately expose themselves to capsaicin compounds that cause pain receptors to fire. Then rate the experience on a numerical scale of enjoyment. Footage of a hot wing eating contest appeared, with red-faced contestants chugging milk between bites. They voluntarily consume neurotoxins for temporary cognitive impairment. Zrel continued as the displays showed people at a cocktail party. That's called happy hour, Jack muttered. It's how we cope with existential dread. And perhaps most disturbing, Zrel's voice dropped to a dramatic whisper. They deliberately transmit fabricated scenarios to each other's neural networks for emotional stimulation. The displays showed a book, then a movie theater, then someone playing a video game. Wait, Jack said, leaning toward Mari. Is he saying fiction is a crime? Most advanced species evolve past the need for imagination once they achieve technological stability, Mari explained. They find the concept of deliberately experiencing non-real scenarios deeply disturbing, especially your horror genre. The idea of seeking out fear-inducing stimuli for entertainment is considered a sign of dangerous psychological instability. Jack blinked. So basically, the more fun something is, the more it freaks them out. That's a crude but accurate assessment. The luminous cloud that seemed to be presiding over the proceedings pulsed gently. The Galactic Council recognizes the human representative for response. Please state your designation. Jack stepped forward, clearing his throat. Commander Jack Reynolds, United Earth Space Command. But I'm just here because I once had a beer with an alien and didn't try to dissect him afterward. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Mari translated. Several species are now debating whether having a beer is a euphemism for a reproductive act or some form of ritual combat. Please clarify your previous statement. The cloud requested. It means I shared a fermented beverage with an extraterrestrial visitor while we waited for his ride home. Jack explained. We also watched basketball. He bet on the Lakers, which showed questionable judgment. This clarification somehow made things worse. The council erupted in alarm chatter. You allowed an interstellar visitor to gamble on the arbitrary movement of objects. One being shouted. And then served it poison. No, Jack backpedaled. It was just a friendly wager. And alcohol isn't poison to humans. Well, technically it is. But the human admits to recreational poisoning. Zarel interjected triumphantly. And gambling on chaos patterns. Further evidence of their disturbing relationship with order and entropy. Jack threw up his hands. Look, if you're going to list every weird thing humans do, we'll be here until the heat death of the universe. Yes, we eat spicy food that hurts us. Yes, we drink alcohol that temporarily impairs us. Yes, we tell stories about things that never happened. We also launch ourselves to the edge of space in metal tubes just to see what's there. Dive into ocean trenches where we absolutely don't belong. And sometimes we climb mountains for no reason other than they exist. The council grew quieter, which Jack couldn't decide was a good sign or a very, very bad one. But you know what else we do, he continued, warming to his subject. We compose music that can make members of our species weep with emotion. We create art that captures beauty we want to preserve. We dedicate our lives to curing diseases that threaten us. We sacrifice our own safety for strangers because we believe in the inherent value of sentient life. Mari nudged him gently. This is actually not terrible. Perhaps focus more on the we're not dangerous to others angle and less on the we do bizarre things for fun part. Jack nodded slightly. What Ambassador Zarel sees as contradictions, we see as the full spectrum of existence. We contain multitudes. As one of our poets said, we're not dangerous to other species, we're only occasionally dangerous to ourselves, and we're working on that. Clorx bounced excitedly. This is precisely my point in my research. The paradoxical nature of humans isn't a bug. It's a feature. Their capacity to hold contradictory impulses creates a unique problem-solving approach. Zarel's skin darkened with what Mari translated as contempt. The xenobiologist's fascination with dangerous species is noted but irrelevant. Allow me to present Exhibit 47B. The displays showed footage of humans responding to various crisis situations. Car accidents, natural disasters, medical emergencies. Note the human capacity for improvised tool use under pressure, Zarel narrated. This specimen uses a writing implement to perform emergency medical intervention. This one repurposes fabric for wound treatment. This group creates a spontaneous rescue chain using vocal commands never previously rehearsed. Jack frowned. You're showing examples of humans saving each other. How exactly is that bad? It demonstrates your species' disturbing resourcefulness, Zarel replied. Most civilized species would wait for appropriate authorities with proper equipment. Humans MacGyver their way through problems with whatever's available. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and terrifying. MacGyver is a verb now, Jack whispered to Mari. Apparently your cultural references have been studied more thoroughly than we realized. The AI replied. Zarel continued. Furthermore, humans display inexplicable resilience to catastrophic setbacks. When faced with overwhelming odds, they often become more determined rather than accepting statistically inevitable outcomes. The displays showed footage of various human achievements. The Wright brothers' first flight, the moon landing, a child learning to walk after losing limbs, scientists celebrating breakthroughs after years of failure. They reject statistical probability when it doesn't suit them. Zarel's voice rose with indignation. Even your entertainment reflects this dangerous delusion. Your action heroes routinely overcome impossible odds. This encourages your species to ignore logical constraints. One particularly impressive-looking alien with crystalline features spoke up. If I may, Ambassador Zrel, what exactly is the specific charge against humanity? Being weird isn't technically a violation of galactic law. The charge, Counselor, Zrel replied, is being dangerously unpredictable in a way that threatens galactic stability. Humans are a chaotic element in an otherwise orderly cosmos. Jack couldn't help himself. So we're basically being put on trial for being interesting. A ripple of something almost like laughter moved through parts of the council. The human makes light of serious concerns. Zrel snapped. But consider a species that treats chaos as entertainment, that thrives on conflict and resolution, that deliberately seeks out challenges instead of comfort. What happens when such a species achieves interstellar capability? How will they disrupt the careful balance we've maintained for millennia? Jack had to admit, Zrel had a point. Humans did have a knack for shaking things up wherever they went. History on Earth didn't suggest humans were great at respecting existing power structures. I need to address the council directly, Jack said to Mari. What's the proper protocol? Normally you'd need to file a request form in triplicate and wait 6 to 8 lunar cycles for approval. Mari replied, but given the circumstances I suggest the human approach, just start talking and see what happens. Jack nodded and stepped forward. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, I request permission to present a counter-argument. The luminous cloud pulsed. Granted, the defendant may speak. Wait, I'm officially the defendant. I thought this was just a friendly evaluation, Jack said. This proceeding will determine whether containment protocols are necessary to protect galactic stability from unpredictable human influence. The cloud clarified. Right, so not friendly at all. Jack took a deep breath. Members of the council, everything Ambassador Zrel has said about humans is technically true. We are contradictory. We are unpredictable. We don't always follow statistical probability. We make stuff up for fun. We seek out challenges instead of avoiding them. Zrel's skin rippled with smug satisfaction. But here's what the ambassador doesn't understand, Jack continued. These aren't bugs in our programming. They're features. Our contradictions drive us to question, to explore, to innovate. Our imagination lets us envision solutions that don't yet exist. Our refusal to accept statistical probability is why we cure diseases, build cities in inhospitable places, and yes, eventually reach for the stars. Jack gestured to the displays still showing human achievements. Everything you see here that frightens you, it's the same quality that would make us valuable members of a galactic community. We don't just accept the universe as it is. We're constantly trying to understand it, improve it, push its boundaries. Mari's lights pulsed in what might have been approval. The probability of success has increased to 13.2%. Not statistically significant, but trending in the right direction. Impressive rhetoric, Zrel interjected, but it doesn't address the fundamental concern. Unpredictability is manageable on a planetary scale. On a galactic scale, it becomes an existential threat. Jack opened his mouth to respond but was cut off by the presiding cloud. The council will recess to consider preliminary arguments. Final presentations will commence in 1 standard unit. Mari translated, we have approximately 2 Earth hours before the council reconvenes. As the various representatives began filing out of the chamber, Jack turned to Mari. How bad is it? On a scale from minor diplomatic incident to extinction-level event, we're hovering around planetary quarantine for a few thousand years. Fantastic, Jack muttered. Any advice? Actually, yes, Mari replied, lights pulsing in a pattern Jack hadn't seen before. I believe it's time to demonstrate another classic human trait, which is breaking rules when they don't make sense. Follow me, Commander. I believe we need to do some unauthorized exploration. Jack raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting we snoop around a highly secure alien facility? Precisely. After all, what's the worst that could happen? Containment protocols. Correction, what's the worst that could happen that isn't already likely to happen? Jack couldn't argue with that logic. Lead the way, Mari. Let's see what this council is really all about. As they slipped away from the main chamber, Jack couldn't help but feel they were fulfilling every stereotype Zrel had presented about humans being unpredictable, breaking rules, and refusing to accept their statistical doom. Then again, those qualities had kept humanity alive this long, might as well put them to work saving Earth from cosmic judgment. I'd like to point out that this is a terrible idea, Jack whispered as he and Mari slipped down a corridor that definitely wasn't on the public tour route. Sneaking around an advanced alien facility seems like exactly the kind of unpredictable human behavior that got us into this mess. Mari's voice module adjusted to a lower volume. On the contrary, Commander, the Council expects you to follow established protocols while awaiting judgment. Breaking into restricted areas demonstrates precisely the human unpredictability that concerns them, which makes it the most predictable thing you could do. That logic hurts my brain. It's called paradoxical reasoning. Humans invented it. Ironically enough, they navigated through increasingly less populated areas of the station, Mari using its diplomatic clearance to bypass basic security protocols. Jack was surprised at how little resistance they encountered. Shouldn't there be more guards or something? He asked. Most advanced civilizations evolved past the need for physical security measures, Mari explained. They rely primarily on compliance and bureaucracy. The concept of someone simply ignoring rules is so alien to them that they rarely plan for it. So the species that invented red tape never figured out someone might just duck under it. Precisely, your metaphor is crude but accurate. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Clorx, who was hunched over a data terminal, appendages moving with surprising speed. Gah, the alien yelped, jumping backward. Commander Reynolds, you startled me. You're not authorized to be in the historical archives sector. Jack froze, mind racing for an explanation. We were just, conducting independent research for our defense, Mari smoothly interjected. Standard procedural right under Galactic Statute 7b. There is no Statute 7b, Clorx replied, head tilting in confusion. Exactly why we're here, Jack improvised. The lack of proper legal representation for emerging species seems suspiciously convenient for the Council, don't you think? Clorx's features arranged themselves into what might have been the alien equivalent of a thoughtful frown. That's actually a valid point. The Council's treatment of pre-FTL civilizations has always struck me as ethically questionable. The alien glanced around nervously. What exactly are you looking for? Jack looked to Mari, who hovered forward. Information on previous containment protocols and the actual criteria for implementing them. Clorx's colors shifted to a muted palette. You won't find that in the public archives. But the alien hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. Follow me, quickly. They followed Clorx through a labyrinth of corridors, eventually arriving at a small unassuming door that looked like a maintenance access. This is my private research lab, Clorx explained, ushering them inside. As a xenobiologist specializing in paradoxical species, I have certain clearances the Council would rather I didn't use for ethical investigations. The room beyond was cluttered with specimens, data terminals, and what appeared to be half-eaten alien snack foods. Clorx activated a holographic display and began rapidly accessing files. The truth about the Council's containment protocols isn't what they claim, Clorx said, voice lowered despite the apparent privacy. It has little to do with protecting galactic stability, and everything to do with protecting established power structures. Images appeared in the air. Planets, species and historical records Jack couldn't begin to decipher. Over the past 50,000 years, the Council has contained 17 species that demonstrated rapid technological advancement coupled with unpredictable social behaviors. Clorx's appendages moved rapidly across the controls. The official records claim these were necessary safety measures. The actual data suggests otherwise. Let me guess, Jack said. Those species threaten to disrupt the comfortable status quo of the dominant civilizations. Precisely, Clorx exclaimed. The Mr. Cian Collective, Ambassador Zrel's species, has held dominant influence in the Council for over 12,000 years. The last species to challenge their authority were the Vulturi, who evolved on a high-gravity world similar to Earth. The display showed beings that reminded Jack of sturdy, four-armed gorillas. The Vulturi advanced from basic tools to rudimentary space travel in just 3,000 years, a pace that alarmed the Council. They were quarantined for safety evaluation, and then, let me guess, tragic asteroid accident, Jack suggested grimly. Clorx's colors darkened. Engineered planetary plague. The official record lists it as a natural evolutionary bottleneck. Mari hovered closer to the displays. The pattern is clear. Any species that advances too quickly while demonstrating unpredictable behaviors is neutralized before reaching full technological maturity. But humans are different, Clorx insisted, almost bouncing with excitement. Your developmental curve is unprecedented. From basic agriculture to digital technology in less than 10,000 years, from first flight to moon landing in 66 years, it's extraordinary, and extraordinarily threatening to the established order, Jack concluded. No wonder they're so keen on containing us. There's more, Clorx said, accessing another set of files. The Council initiated observation of Earth approximately 50,000 years ago, when early humans first demonstrated complex tool use and abstract thinking. The observation logs show increasing alarm as humans continued to advance despite numerous setbacks. Images flashed across the display. Ice ages, plagues, wars, climate disasters, all alongside human technological and cultural developments that continued despite these challenges. The Council expected each major catastrophe to reset human development, Clorx explained. Instead, you used each setback as a catalyst for further innovation. It's fascinating from a scientific perspective and terrifying from a political one. Jack shook his head. So this whole trial is a sham. They've already decided we're too unpredictable to have a place at the galactic table. Not entirely, Clorx corrected. Several council members genuinely believe containment is a safety measure, not a political tool, and a few, like myself, advocate for integration rather than isolation. But yes, the dominant factions, led by species like the Mr. Seans, have likely already decided your fate. Mari's lights pulsed rapidly. We need evidence we can present to the full council, something that exposes the political motivation behind these containment protocols. I might have just the thing, Clorx replied, digging through a chaotic pile of equipment. The alien extracted what looked like a crystal data storage device. This contains classified minutes from the Inner Council's special session on Earth, convened after your first nuclear detonation. It includes Zrel's grandfather proposing a preemptive containments before humans could achieve interstellar capability. Jack took the crystal carefully. Why would you help us? Aren't you risking your position here? Clorx's colors shifted to a gentle, warm pattern. Commander, I've dedicated my life to studying species like yours. The universe needs diversity to thrive. Homogeneous thinking leads to stagnation. Besides, the alien added with what might have been a smile, I find your species' habit of naming your vehicles and forming emotional attachments to inanimate objects utterly charming. A soft chime sounded from somewhere on Clorx's person. The council will reconvene in 20 minutes. You should return to the chamber before your absence is noted. As they prepared to leave, a thought struck Jack. Wait, you mentioned the council has been watching Earth for 50,000 years. How? We've only detected artificial satellites for the last century or so. Clorx made a sound that Mari translated as embarrassed laughter. Oh, that's quite clever actually. Remember those peculiar monoliths that occasionally appear in remote locations on your planet? The tall black rectangular structures that cause such a stir on your internet. Those are alien monitoring devices, Jack asked incredulously. Monitoring devices, data collection points and quantum communication relays, Clorx confirmed. The council thought placing them in plain sight was the perfect cover, so obvious that humans would assume they were either natural formations or elaborate hoaxes. Jack couldn't help but laugh. That's both brilliant and incredibly stupid, like hiding a surveillance camera inside a giant fake tree in someone's living room. I know, isn't it wonderful? Clorx seemed genuinely delighted. This is exactly why humans are so fascinating. Most species would either never notice the monoliths or would build religions around them. Humans just take selfies with them and argue about them on social media. As they made their way back toward the council chambers, Jack felt a strange mix of dread and determination. Earth's fate hung in the balance, decided by beings who feared humanity's core qualities rather than recognizing their value. Mari, he said quietly, I think I know how to approach our defense. Based on this new information, I calculate a 19.4% chance of success, the AI replied. Still abysmal, but a marked improvement. Only 19.4% question mark. That's practically a guarantee by human standards. Jack grinned. We've accomplished far more with far less. And that, Mary observed, is precisely what terrifies them. As they re-entered the council chambers, Jack noticed a new figure standing near their assigned position, a slender luminous being with an intricate pattern of lights flowing beneath translucent skin. "Commander Reynolds," the being said in a melodious voice. "I am Lumi, Junior Archivist 3rd Class. I've been assigned to assist with your final presentation." The being leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Clork sent me. I have additional files you might find useful." Jack nodded slightly, careful not to draw attention. "Good to meet you, Lumi. I think we're about to put on quite a show for the council." The luminous cloud at the center of the chamber pulsed with renewed energy. "The council will now reconvene. Final arguments will commence." Ambassador Zrel floated forward, tentacles arranged in what Jack now recognized as a posture of supreme confidence. "Esteemed council members, the evidence is clear. Species E4721, humans, represent an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. I propose immediate implementation of containment protocols." Jack took a deep breath. It was time to show the galaxy what humans did best, turning impossible odds into fighting chances. The council chambers hummed with tension as Jack stepped forward. Ambassador Zrel's tentacles were arranged in what Jack now recognized as the cephalopod equivalent of a smug grin. The displays around the chamber still cycled through images of human history, a carefully curated montage designed to portray humanity as dangerously unpredictable. "Members of the Galactic Council," Jack began, "before I present humanity's final defense, I'd like to request a small procedural accommodation." The luminous cloud presiding over the proceedings pulsed gently. "State your request, human representative." "I'd like to utilize your impressive display systems to share relevant contextual information during my presentation," Jack said, gesturing to Lumi, who held the crystal data storage device. "My assistant will handle the technical aspects." Zrel's skin darkened with suspicion. The human should not be permitted to manipulate council technology. Who knows what chaos they might cause? The cloud seemed to consider this. The human representative is entitled to present evidence in their defense. "Request granted under supervision." Lumi glided forward, inserting the crystal into a nearby terminal. Jack nodded gratefully to the luminous being before turning back to the assembled council. "Esteemed representatives of galactic civilization," Jack began, his voice stronger than he felt. "Ambassador Zrel has presented a compelling case against humanity. We are unpredictable, we are contradictory, we refuse to accept statistical probability when it doesn't suit us. We find entertainment in chaos and challenge." Zrel's tentacles curled with satisfaction. "But here's what the ambassador failed to mention," Jack continued. "These traits aren't unique to humans, they're the fundamental characteristics of life itself." With a subtle nod to Lumi, the displays changed. Instead of human history, they now showed footage from the council's own archives. The early development of various member species, including the Mystrixians. "Every species represented here today once possessed these same qualities," Jack said as the footage played. "The drive to explore, to question, to challenge limitations. These aren't human flaws. They're the essential traits that propel evolution forward." Zrel surged forward. "This is outrageous. These archives are restricted." "Are they?" Jack asked innocently. "I assumed the council would want all relevant information considered when deciding the fate of an entire species. Or is transparency not a galactic value?" The cloud pulsed with what might have been irritation. "Continue, human representative. But be advised that accessing restricted archives may constitute a separate violation." "Noted," Jack replied. "Now let's discuss what these archives actually contain." The displays shifted again, showing documents with timestamps and official council seals. Mary hovered forward to translate. "These are the minutes from an inner council meeting held in 1945 Earth time," the AI explained, "just after humans developed nuclear technology. I draw your attention to the statement by Senior Ambassador Krell of the Mystrixian Collective, Ambassador Zrel's grandfather." Zrel's skin went almost white with alarm. "This is," I quote, Mary continued, "the human species has demonstrated an alarming rate of technological advancement despite numerous setbacks. Their resilience and adaptability poses a long-term threat to established collective interests. I propose immediate containment before they achieve interstellar capability." A murmur ran through the council chambers. Jack pressed his advantage. "Containment," he said, letting the word hang in the air. An interesting term. Let's see what that actually means in practice. The displays shifted again, showing records of past containment protocols implemented against other species, engineered plagues, artificially triggered natural disasters, technological sabotage designed to look like accidents. 17 species, Jack said, his voice hardening. 17 civilizations deemed too unpredictable for the galactic community, too innovative, too resilient, too likely to challenge the comfortable status quo maintained by certain, established interests. Zrel's tentacles were now writhing with what Jack hoped was the cephalopod equivalent of panic. These are internal security matters. The human has no right. The human, Jack interrupted, is defending his planet against what appears to be a predetermined judgment based not on actual danger, but on political convenience. The crystalline alien who had questioned Zrel earlier leaned forward. Is this true, Ambassador? Are containment protocols primarily political tools rather than safety measures? Zrel's skin pulsed with dark patterns. Counselor Trek, these matters are complex. The Mystrixian Collective has guided galactic policy for millennia with wisdom and foresight. That wasn't the question, Jack interjected, and your non-answer is telling. He turned to address the full council. Members of the Galactic Council, I won't pretend humans are perfect. We're messy, complicated, and yes, sometimes frightening in our capacity for both creation and destruction, but we deserve to be judged honestly, not as a threat to galactic safety, but as a challenge to galactic complacency. Lumi adjusted the displays to show human achievements, not just technological, but artistic, philosophical, and humanitarian. You've seen our contradictions, Jack continued. Now see our potential. We create music that can move emotions across cultural boundaries. We develop medicine not just for ourselves but for other species. We imagine possibilities beyond what exists and then work to make them real. Jack paused, glancing at Mary, who gave the AI equivalent of an encouraging nod. The question before you isn't whether humans are unpredictable. We are. The question is whether that unpredictability is something to be feared and eliminated, or respected and integrated into a truly diverse galactic community. Ambassador Zrel had recovered enough to counter poetic sentiments, Commander Reynolds, but they do not address the fundamental issue. Your species advanced from primitive tool use to nuclear weapons in the blink of a cosmic eye. Your development curve is unprecedented and dangerous. Unprecedented, yes, Jack agreed. Dangerous, only to those who benefit from keeping things exactly as they are. He gestured to the displays, which now showed the current power distribution among Council species, with the Mystrixian Collective dominating key positions. The truly unpredictable threat isn't humanity, Jack said. It's what happens when any system becomes too stable, too comfortable, too resistant to change. You don't fear us because we're dangerous. You fear us because we're different. A new voice spoke up, Clorx, who had been silent until now. If I may address the Council, as the leading xenobiologist specializing in paradoxical species, I can confirm Commander Reynolds' assessment. My research indicates that diversity of approach is essential for long-term evolutionary success, not just for individual species, but for galactic civilization as a whole. Jack smiled gratefully at the alien scientist. Thank you, Dr. Clorx. And with that in mind, I'd like to propose an alternative to containment. The cloud pulsed. The human may present alternatives, though the Council is not obligated to consider them. Fair enough, Jack said. Instead of containing Earth, I propose a probationary period of cultural exchange. Allow limited human representatives to visit the Council station. Send observers to Earth, openly this time, not disguised as mysterious monoliths. Let us prove through actions, not words, that humanity's unpredictability can be an asset, not a liability. The crystalline Counselor Trek leaned forward. An interesting proposal. Controlled cultural exchange might provide valuable data without undue risk. Zrel's tentacles lashed in agitation. This is precisely the kind of naive thinking that has allowed dangerous species to infiltrate galactic society before. The humans' clever rhetoric doesn't change the fundamental risk they represent. Jack was about to respond when alarms suddenly blared throughout the chamber. The displays flickered,
then showed security footage of what appeared to be a massive ship approaching the council station. "What is this?" the Cloud demanded. A new alien Jack hadn't seen before rushed into the chamber. "Emergency alert. Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity. It's not responding to hails and our sensors can't penetrate its defensive fields." Chaos erupted as council members began shouting questions and demands. Jack turned to Mary in confusion. "Is that from Earth?" he whispered. "Impossible," Mary replied. "Earth doesn't possess technology capable of reaching this station, let alone shielding against their sensors." The mysterious ship grew larger on the displays, its design unlike anything Jack had ever seen. All sharp angles and ominous protrusions that seemed designed to project menace. Then, just as panic was reaching fever pitch, the ship vanished, simply disappeared as if it had never been there.
The chamber fell silent. A moment later, every display in the chamber changed to show the same image: Earth, beautiful and blue, with a simple message overlaid in the universal galactic language: "Final warning, we have been observing your deliberations. We have been playing nice. Decide wisely." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Jack stared at the displays in shock, then glanced at Mari, whose lights were pulsing in what might have been confusion. "Did you?" he whispered. "No," Mari replied quietly. "I have no explanation for this." Jack's mind raced. Earth couldn't possibly have sent that ship or that message. It had to be someone else, someone with a vested interest in the outcome of this trial. But who? He caught a glimpse of Lumi near the terminal, the luminous being's skin patterns cycling through what might have been suppressed amusement. Understanding dawned. Jack carefully kept his face neutral as he turned back to the council. "Members of the Galactic Council," he said calmly, "it appears my planet has something to add to our defense." Zerl's skin had gone an ashen gray. This is exactly the kind of unpredictable behavior we warned about. Threatening the council, manufacturing phantom ships as intimidation tactics. Jack spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. "I assure you, Ambassador, I had no knowledge of this demonstration. Though I can't help but note the irony. You feared human unpredictability and now you're experiencing it firsthand." The Cloud's pulsations had become erratic. "The council will recess immediately to assess this new development. All representatives will remain in the station." As the council members hastily filed out, many casting fearful glances at Jack, Mari drifted closer. "Commander, I calculate the probability of this being an actual Earth transmission at approximately 0.001%. "I know," Jack whispered, "but let's not correct their misunderstanding just yet." Clorks bounded over, colors shifting rapidly in what Jack now recognized as barely contained excitement. "That was brilliant. Did you arrange that demonstration? The phantom ship? The message? The timing was exquisite." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Jack replied with a carefully blank expression, "though I'd be interested to know if certain members of the archival staff might have access to holographic projection systems." Lumi glided closer, skin patterns now definitely displaying amusement. "The archives contain many historical records of diplomatic negotiations," the being said cryptically, "including psychological tactics employed by various species, for purely educational purposes, of course." "Of course," Jack agreed, fighting to keep a straight face. As they spoke, Counselor Trick approached, crystalline features arranged in what might have been respect. "Commander Reynolds," the alien said quietly, "that was most impressive. Whether your planet arranged that demonstration or not, you've certainly made an impact on the council." "Just presenting our case, Counselor," Jack replied innocently. Trick's crystalline structure shimmered. "Indeed, and I suspect the deliberations will now proceed quite differently. Ambassador Zerl's faction has held sway for too long. Perhaps it's time for, how do humans put it, a shake-up." As the counselor moved away, Jack allowed himself a small smile. The game had changed, and for once, humanity's reputation for unpredictability was working in their favor. Now they just had to keep the bluff going long enough to secure Earth's future among the stars. The emergency session of the Galactic Council reconvened with a palpable tension in the air. What had begun as a routine containment hearing had evolved into something unprecedented. Council members whispered among themselves, casting nervous glances at Jack, who maintained a carefully neutral expression despite his internal panic. Ambassador Zerl floated at his podium, tentacles twitching with agitation. His skin had settled into a mottled pattern that Mari translated as extreme distress with undertones of political calculation.
The luminous cloud presiding over the proceedings pulsed into full brightness. The Council will now address the unexpected communication from Earth. Commander Reynolds, please explain your planet's actions. Jack stepped forward, mind racing. The phantom ship and message had been a brilliant bluff engineered by Lumi, but now he needed to maintain it without outright lying, a diplomatic tightrope walk if there ever was one. Esteemed Council members, he began, I was as surprised as you by the demonstration. However, I can offer some context. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. It means one should negotiate peacefully while also making clear the consequences of aggression. What you witnessed was, I believe, Earth's version of showing its stick. Are you claiming Earth possesses technology capable of reaching this station? Counselor Trek asked, crystalline features reflecting light in mesmerizing patterns. Our records indicate your species has barely achieved rudimentary interplanetary travel. Jack smiled enigmatically. Your records also indicated we'd destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons, yet here we are. Perhaps your monitoring hasn't been as comprehensive as you believed. This wasn't technically a lie. Their monitoring clearly had missed things, but it allowed the Council to draw their own alarming conclusions. The transmission mentioned playing nice. Zerl interjected, voice pitched higher than before. Is this a threat of hostile action if the Council's decision doesn't favor Earth? Jack sighed, as if reluctant to state the obvious. Ambassador, humanity has been aware of extraterrestrial observation for decades. Did you really think all those monoliths went unnoticed? We simply chose not to acknowledge them publicly to avoid societal disruption. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Mari translated snippets. They knew. How long? What else have they concealed? As for the message itself, Jack continued once the chamber quieted, I believe it reflects a simple reality. Earth has been repeatedly tested throughout its history. Ice ages, pandemics, world wars, and each time we've emerged stronger. We've survived every calamity, including several that your records suggest were not entirely natural. He let that implication hang in the air before continuing. The version of humanity you've been observing, the one that makes art and music, that explores space out of curiosity rather than conquest, that's humanity playing nice, playing by the rules of civilization we've created for ourselves. Jack leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice just enough to make everyone strain to hear. But make no mistake, if threatened with extinction, humans are capable of becoming the most dangerous species you've ever encountered. Not because we're inherently violent, but because we simply refuse to die. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Jack could almost feel the collective alien anxiety like a physical presence. Commander Reynolds, the cloud finally spoke. Are you suggesting Earth would declare war on the Galactic Council if containment protocols were implemented? Jack shook his head. No, I'm stating that containment protocols would inevitably fail, and what emerged afterward would no longer be the humanity you see today. We'd be something else, something born from existential desperation, and history suggests we're quite resourceful when desperate. He gestured to Mari, who projected historical footage of human achievements against overwhelming odds, the breaking of the sound barrier, the moon landing, the eradication of diseases once thought invincible. Every time you've predicted our limitations, Jack said, we've surpassed them. Every model you've created to understand us has failed to capture our capacity for innovation under pressure.
Zal's tentacles were now almost motionless, a sign of extreme stress according to Mari's subtle translation feed. The human speaks with alarming confidence, the Mysterician ambassador said, yet we must not be swayed by empty posturing. Earth remains technologically inferior, regardless of their demonstration. Clorx bounced forward unexpectedly. Actually, I must interject as the Council's expert on paradoxical species. Commander Reynolds' assessment aligns with my research. Humanity's technological development curve is exponential, not linear. Their pattern recognition capabilities allow them to make intuitive leaps that our predictive models cannot account for. The alien scientist projected a series of charts. Based on my analysis, if humanity were to direct its full cognitive and material resources toward overcoming a specific challenge, such as defeating containment protocols, the probability of eventual success approaches statistical certainty within a surprisingly brief time frame. How brief? Counselor Turek asked. Based on their current acceleration curve and assuming existential motivation, Clorx's colors shifted to a tentative blue, between 50 and 100 Earth years. A mere moment in cosmic time, Jack added quietly, and that's assuming we play by conventional rules of physics as currently understood. This was a masterful bluff, and Jack could see it landing exactly as intended. The council members were shifting uncomfortably, reconsidering the cost-benefit analysis of containing humanity. The luminous cloud expanded slightly. The council will vote on the matter of Earth. All representatives register your position now. Holographic interfaces appeared before each council member. Jack held his breath as thousands of alien beings recorded their votes. Mari hovered closer, lights pulsing in a pattern that somehow conveyed the AI equivalent of crossed fingers. After what seemed like an eternity, the votes were tallied. The cloud pulsed in what might have been surprise. By a majority of 73%, the Galactic Council has voted to deny the implementation of containment protocols for species E4721, humans. Furthermore, by a margin of 68%, the Council approves a probationary period of limited cultural exchange as proposed by Commander Reynolds. Jack maintained his diplomatic composure, but inside he was fighting the urge to perform a victory dance that would probably scandalize half the Council. Earth thanks the Council for its wisdom, he said solemnly. We look forward to a productive relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. Ambassador Zell's skin had darkened to an almost black hue. The Council's decision is noted, but I must register the Mysterician Collective's formal protest. This unprecedented approach carries unacceptable risks. Your protest is noted, Ambassador, the cloud replied. This session is now concluded. Commander Reynolds will be provided with the details of the exchange program for relay to Earth authorities. As the council dispersed, Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They'd done it. Earth was safe for now at least. Clorx bounded over, colors shifting in patterns of excitement. That was magnificent. The council hasn't reversed a containment recommendation in over 6,000 years. You've made history, Commander. We all did, Jack replied, nodding gratefully to Lumi, who was discreetly removing the crystal from the terminal. I couldn't have done it without your help. Trek approached, crystalline form glittering under the chamber's lights. An impressive performance, Commander. The crystalline consensus looks forward to establishing relations with Earth. We find your species' unpredictability refreshing in an otherwise stagnant galactic political landscape. The counselor leaned closer, voice dropping. A word of caution, however. Ambassador Zell and the Mysterician Collective aren't accustomed to defeat. They may seek alternative means to address their concerns about Earth. We'll keep that in mind, Jack replied. Earth has some experience with political intrigue. After Trek departed, Mari hovered closer. Commander, I feel compelled to point out that we've essentially bluffed our way into galactic politics using manufactured evidence, theatrical deception and implied threats. In other words, Jack grinned. Classic human diplomacy. Indeed, I calculate a 92.7% probability that this approach will lead to complications in future negotiations. I'm counting on it, Jack replied. The council needs a little unpredictability to shake things up. As they made their way to the transport area for the return journey to Earth, Jack found himself wondering how exactly he was going to explain all this to General Park and the President. Good news, we're not being exterminated, but I may have implied we have secret advanced technology and would become vengeful space monsters if provoked. Seemed like a challenging report to deliver. The return teleportation was just as unpleasant as the first trip, though Jack managed to keep his breakfast where it belonged this time. When his atoms finished reassembling on the White House lawn, he was greeted by an anxious welcoming committee of military officers and government officials. Commander Reynolds, General Park said, stepping forward. Your communication was cut off after you arrived at the council station. What happened? Are we in danger? Jack straightened his uniform. The short version, General. Earth is safe. We've been approved for a probationary period of cultural exchange rather than containment. Details to follow in the full debriefing. The gathered officials visibly relaxed. And the long version? Park asked. The long version involves political intrigue, ancient conspiracies, a fake spaceship and me accidentally threatening the entire Galactic Council with humanity's dark side. Jack replied. I recommend strong coffee before that briefing. As the group moved toward the White House, Jack suddenly became aware that his communication device was still active, the one connected to the Council's translation system. He hurriedly switched it off, hoping no one on the Council end had heard his fake spaceship comment.
Unknown to Jack in the Council's communication hub, a junior technician was staring at their monitor in horror. The human's admission about the deception had been clearly recorded. The technician's appendages hovered over the alert button that would notify Council security. After a moment's hesitation, the technician deliberately closed the communication channel and marked it as transmission error, data corrupted. Some truths were better left unreported, especially when they involved a species crazy enough to bluff the entire Galactic Council and somehow succeed. Back on Earth, as Jack prepared for what promised to be the most unusual debriefing in political history, he found himself grinning. Humanity had just pulled off the greatest bluff in cosmic history, securing their place among the stars through sheer audacity and a little help from some forward-thinking aliens. "You know, Mari," he said as they walked into the White House, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful interstellar friendship." 88.2% probability you're correct, the AI replied. "Though I feel compelled to remind you that our success was based primarily on deception, unauthorized access to restricted files, and implied threats." "Like I said," Jack laughed. "Classic human diplomacy. The galaxy won't know what hit it." As the doors closed behind them, somewhere in the vast cosmic expanse, the Galactic Council found itself dealing with an unprecedented situation, a species that refused to fit into any predictable category. A species that had transformed their greatest perceived weakness, unpredictability, into their greatest strength. And perhaps, though none would admit it openly, a species that had inadvertently introduced something the ancient galactic civilization had been missing for millennia: uncertainty. The spice of cosmic life, the catalyst for evolution and change. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not with a bang or a whimper, but with a bluff so audacious it might just change everything.